Lines to a Lady on her Departure for India, by Thomas Hood. By Linda Ray Nielsen, Vancouver, B.C. Go where the waves run rather Holborn hilly, and tempest makes a soda water sea, almost as rough as our rough Piccadilly, and think of me. Go where the mild Madeira ripens her juice, a wine more praised than it deserves to be. Go past the Cape just capable of verjuice, and think of me. Go where the tiger in the darkest prowleth, making a midnight meal of he and she. Go where the lion in his hunger howleth, and think of me. Go where the serpent dangerous coileth, or lies along at full length like a tree. Go where the suttee in her own soot broileth, and think of me. Go where with human notes the parrot dealeth, in mono polylogue, with tongue as free, and like a woman all she can revealeth, and think of me. Go to the land of muslin and nankeening, and parasols of straw where hats should be. Go to the land of slaves and palankeening, and think of me. Go to the land of jungles and vast hills, and tall bamboos, may none bamboozle thee. Go gaze upon their elephants and castles, and think of me. Go where a cook must always be a courier, and parch the peppered palate like a pea. Go where the fierce mosquito is a worrier, and think of me. Go where the maiden on a marriage plan goes, consigned for wedlock to Cacada's quay. Where woman goes for mart, the same as mangoes, and think of me. Go where the sun is very hot and fervent. Go to the land of pagod and rupee, where every black will be your slave and servant, and think of me. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Angler's Farewell, by Thomas Hood. By Linda Marie Nielsen, Vancouver, B.C. Resigned, I kissed the rod. Well, I think it is time to put up, for it does not accord with my notions. Wrist, elbow, and chine, stiff from throwing the line, to take nothing at last by my motions. I ground bait my way as I go, and dip in at each watery dimple. But however I wish to inveigle the fish to my gentle, they will not play simple. Though my float goes so swimmingly on, my bad luck never seems to diminish. It would seem that the bream must be scarce in the stream, and the chub, though it's chubby, be thinnish. Not a trout there can be in the place, not a grayling or rudd worth the mention, and although at my hook with attention I look, I can ne'er see my hook with a tench on. At a brandling once gudgeon gape, but they seem upon different terms now. Have they taken advice of the council of nice, and rejected their diet of worms now? In vain my live minnow I spin, not a pike seems to think it worth snatching. For the gut I have brought, I had better have bought a good rope that was used to jack catching. Not a nibble has ruffled my cork, it is vain in this river to search then. I may wait till it's night, without any bite, and at roost time have never a perch then. No roach can I meet with, no bleak, save what in the air is so sharp now. Not a dace have I got, and I fear it is not Carpe diem, a day for the carp now. Oh, there is not a £1 prize to be got in this fresh water lottery. What then can I deem of so fishless a stream but that 'tis like St. Mary's Ottery? For an eel I have learned how to try, by a method of Walton's own showing, but a fisherman feels little prospect of eels in a path that's devoted to towing. I have tried all the water for miles, till I'm weary of dipping and casting, and hungry and faint, let the fancy just paint what it is without fish to be fasting. And the rain drizzles down very fast, while my dinner time sounds from a far bell, so wet to the skin I'll e'en back to my inn, where at least I'm sure of a barbell. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Ode to the Advocates for the Removal of the Smithfield Market, by Thomas Hood. Read for LibriVox.org, by Linda Marie Nielsen, Vancouver, BC. Sweeping our flocks and herds. Douglas. O philanthropic men! For this address I need not make an apology, who aim at clearing out the Smithfield pen, and planting further off its vile zoology, permit me thus to tell, I like your efforts well, for routing that great nest of ornithology. Be not dismayed although repulsed at first, and driven from their horse, and pig, and lamb parts. Charge on, you shall upon their homewards burst, and carry all their bulwarks and their ramparts. Go on, ye wholesale drovers, and drive away the Smithfield flocks and herds, as wild as Tartar curds, that come so fat and kicking from their clovers. Off with them all, those restive buttes, that vex our streets, and plunge, then lunge, and butt, and battle, and save the female sex from being cowed, like Io, by the cattle. Fancy, when droves appear on the hill of Holborn, roaring from its top, your ladies, ready as they own, to drop, take themselves to Thompson's with a fear on. Or, in St. Martin's Lane, scared by a bullock, in a frisky vein, fancy the terror of your timid daughters, while rushing souse, in a coffee house, to find it, slaughters. Or fancy this, walking along the street some stranger miss, her head with no such thought of danger laden, when suddenly 'tis Aries, Taurus, Virgo, you don't know Latin, I translate it ergo, into your area a bull throws the maiden. Think of some poor old crone, treated just like a penny, with a toss, at that vile spot now grown, so generally known, for making a cow cross. Nay, fancy your own selves far off from stall, or shed, or shop, and that an ox infuriate, just pins you to the wall, giving you a strong dose of oxymurate. Methinks I hear the neighbors that live round the market ground, thus make appeal unto their civic fellows. 'Tis well for you that live apart, unable to hear this brutal babel, but our firesides are troubled with their bellows. Folks that too freely sup, must e'en put up with their own troubles if they can't digest, but we must needs regard the case as hard, that others' victuals should disturb our rest, that from our sleep your food should start and jump us. We like, ourselves, a steak, but sirs, for pity's sake, we don't want oxen at our doors to rump us. If we do doze, it really is too bad, we constantly are roared awake or rung through bullocks mad, that run in all the night thoughts of our young. Such are the woes of sleepers. Now let's take the woes of those that wish to keep awake. Oh, think, when Wombwell gives his annual feasts, think of these bulls of Bashan, far from mild ones, such fierce, tame beasts, that nobody much cares to see the wild ones. Think of the show woman, what shows a dwarf, seeing a red cow come, to swallow her Tom Thumb, and forced with broom of birch to keep her off. Think too of Messrs. Richardson and Co., when looking at their public private boxes, to see in the back row three live sheep's heads, a porker's, and an ox's. Think of their orchestra, when two horns come, though to accompany the double drum. Or, in the midst of murder and remorses, just when the ghost is certain, a great rent in the curtain, and enter two tall skeletons of horses. Great philanthropics, pray urge these topics upon the solemn councils of the nation. Get a bill soon, and give, some noon, the bulls a bull of excommunication. Let the old fair have fair play as its right, and to each show and sight ye shall be treated with a free list latitude to Richardson's stage dramas, Dio and Cosmo ramas, giants and Indians wild, dwarf, sea bear, and fat child, and that most rare of shows, a show of gratitude. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. A Report from Below by Thomas Hood. Read for LibriVox.org by Linda Marie Nielsen, Vancouver, BC. Blow high, blow low. Sea Song. As Mr. B. and Mistress B. one night were sitting down to tea, with toast and muffins hot, they heard a loud and sudden bounce, that made the very china flounce. They could not for a time pronounce, if they were safe or shot, for memory brought a deed to match, at Deptford done by night. Before one eye appeared a patch, in t'other eye a blight, to be belaboured at of life, without some small attempt at strife. Our nature will not grovel. One impulse had both man and dame. He seized the tongs, she did the same, leaving the ruffian, if he came, the poker and the shovel. Suppose the couple standing so, when rushing footsteps from below made pulses fast and fervent, and first burst in the frantic cat, all steaming like a brewer's rat, and then, as white as my cravat, poor Mary May, the servant. Lord, how the couple's teeth did chatter, master and mistress both flew at her, "Speak! Fire! or murder! What's the matter?" Till Mary, getting breath, upon her tail began to touch, with rapid tongue, full trotting, such as if she thought she had too much to tell before her death. "We was both, ma'am, in the wash house, ma'am, a standing at our tubs, and Mrs. Round was seconding what little things I rubs. 'Mary,' says she to me, 'I say,' and there she stops for coffin, 'that dratted copper flue he's took to smokin' very often, but please the pigs, for that's her way of swearing in a passion, I'll blow it up and not beset a coffin in this fashion. Well, down she takes my master's horn, I mean his horn for loading, and empties every grain alive, for to set the flue exploding. "Lawk, Mrs. Round," say I, and stares, "that quantum is unproper, I'm sartin sure it can't not take a pound to sky a copper. You'll powder both our heads off, so I tells you with its puff." But she only dried her fingers, and she takes a pinch of snuff. "Well, when the pinch is over, teach your grandmother to suck a powder horn," says she. "Well," says I wish you luck." Them words sets up her back, so with her hands upon her hips, "Come," says she, quite in a huff, "come keep your tongue inside your lips. Afore ever you was born, I was well used to things like these. I shall put in the grate, and let it burn up by degrees." So in it goes, and bounce! O Lord, it gives us such a rattle, I thought we both were canonized, like sojers in a battle. Up goes the copper like a squib, and us on both our backs, and bless the tubs they bundled off, and split all into cracks. Well, there I fainted dead away, and might have been cut shorter, but Providence was kind, and brought me to with scalding water. I first looks round for Mrs. Round, and sees her at a distance, as stiff as starch, and looked as dead as anything in existence. All scarched and grimed, and more than that, I see the copper slap right on her head, for all the world like a percussion copper cap. Well, I crooks her little fingers, and crumps them well up together, as humanity p'ints out, and burnt her nostrums with a feather, but for all I can do, to restore her to her mortality, she never gives a sign of a return to sensuality. Thinks I, well there she lies, as dead as my own late departed mother. Well, she'll wash no more in this world, whatever she does in t'other. So I gives myself to scramble up the linens for a minute. Lawk, sich a sight, thinks I, it's well my master wasn't in it. Oh, never, 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 never see a sight so shockin'. Here lays a leg, and there a leg, I mean, you know, a stocking, bodies all slit and torn to rags, and many a tattered skirt, and arms burnt off, and sides and backs all scorched and black with dirt, as nobody was in 'em, none but nobody was hurt. Well, there I am, a scrambling up the things all in a lump, when mercy on us, such a groan as makes my heart to jump. And there she is, a lying with a crazy sort of eye, a staring at the wash house roof, laid open to the sky. Then she beckons with a finger, and so, down to her I reaches, and puts my ear agin her mouth to hear her dying speeches. For poor soul, she has a husband, and young orphans, as I knew. Well, ma'am, you won't believe it, but it's gospel fact and true. But these words is all she whispered, "Why, where is the powder blue?" End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
I'm Not a Single Man by Thomas Hood. Read for LibriVox.org by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. I'm not a single man. Lines written in a young lady's album. A pretty task, Miss S., to ask a Benedictine pen that cannot quite at freedom write like those of other men. No lover's plaint my muse must paint to fill this page's span, but be correct and recollect I'm not a single man. Pray only think for pen and ink how hard to get along that may not turn on words that burn, or love, the life of song. 9 muses, if I chooses, I may woo all in a clan, but one Miss S I daren't address, I'm not a single man. Scribblers unwed with little head may eke it out with heart, and in their lays it often plays a rare first fiddle part. They make a kiss to rhyme with bliss, but if I so began, I have my fears about my ears, I'm not a single man. Upon your cheek I may not speak, nor on your lip be warm, I must be wise about your eyes, and formal with your form. Of all that sort of thing, in short, on T.H. Bailey's plan, I must not twine a single line, I'm not a single man. A watchman's part compels my heart to keep you off its beat, and I might dare as soon to swear at you as at your feet. I can't expire in passion's fire as other poets can. My life, she's by, won't let me die. I'm not a single man. Shut out from love, denied a dove, forbidden bow and dart, without a groan to call my own, with neither hand nor heart. To Hymen vowed, and not allowed to flirt e'en with your fan. Here end as just a friend I must. I'm not a single man. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
A Superstition, a Pathetic Ballad by Thomas Hood. Read for LibriVox.org by Drew Conway. 4th of December 2016. Kent. O flesh, flesh, how art thou fishy field? Mercutio. 'Twas 12 o'clock by Chelsea chimes, when all in hungry trim, good Mr. Jupp sat down to sup, with wife and Kate and Jim. Said he, upon this dainty cod, how bravely I shall sup, when whiter than the tablecloth a ghost came rising up. O father dear, O mother dear, dear Kate and brother Jim, you know when someone went to see, don't cry, but I am him. You hope some day with fond embrace to greet your absent Jack, but oh, I am come here to say I'm never coming back. From Alexandria we set sail, with corn and oil and figs, but steering too much sour we struck upon the Sow of Pigs. The ship we pumped till we could see old England from the tops, when down she went with all our hands right in the Channel's chops. Just give a look in Norie's chart, the very place it tells. I think it says 12 fathom deep, clay bottom mixed with shells. Well, there we are till hands aloft we have at last a call. The pug I had for brother Jim, Kate's parrot too and all. But oh, my spirit cannot rest in Davy Jones's sod, till I've appeared to you and said, don't sup on that 'ere cod. You live on land and little think what passes in the sea. Last Sunday week at 2 p.m. that cod was picking me. Those oysters too that look so plump and seem so nicely done, they put my corpse in many shells instead of only one. Oh, do not eat those oysters then, and do not touch the shrimps. When I was in my briny grave, they sucked my blood like imps. Don't eat what brutes would never eat, the brutes I used to pat. They'll know the smell they used to smell, just try the dog and cat. The spirit fled, they wept his fate, and cried, alack, alack. At last up started brother Jim, let's try if Jack was Jack. They called the dog, they called the cat, and little kitten too, and down they put the cod and sauce, to see what brutes would do. Old Tray licked all the oysters up, Puss never stood at crimps, but munched the cod, and little Kit quite feasted on the shrimps. The thing was odd, and minus cod and sauce they stood like posts. Oh, prudent folks, for fear of hoax, put no belief in ghosts. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Duel, a Serious Ballad by Thomas Hood. Read for LibriVox.org by Drew Conway. 29th of December, 2016. Kent. Like the two kings of Brentford smelling at one nosegay. In Brentford town of old renown there lived a Mr. Bray, who fell in love with Lucy Bell, and so did Mr. Clay. To see her ride from Hammersmith, by all it was allowed. Such fair outsides are seldom seen, such angels on a cloud. Said Mr. Bray to Mr. Clay, you choose to rival me, and court Miss Bell, but there your court no thoroughfare shall be. Unless you now give up your suit, you may repent your love. I who have shot a pigeon match can shoot a turtle dove. So pray before you woo her more, consider what you do. If you pop aught to Lucy Bell, I'll pop it into you. Said Mr. Clay to Mr. Bray, your threats are quite explode. One who has been a volunteer knows how to prime and load. And so I say to you, unless your passion quiet keeps, I who have shot and hit bull's eyes may chance to hit a sheep's. Now gold is oft for silver changed, and that for copper red, but these two went away to give each other change for lead. But first they sought a friend apiece, their pleasant thought to give. When they were dead, they thus should have 2 seconds still to live. To measure out the ground not long, the seconds then forbore, and having taken one rash step, they took a dozen more. They next prepared each pistol pan against the deadly strife, by putting in the prime of death against the prime of life. Now all was ready for the foes, but when they took their stands, fear made them tremble, so they found they both were shaking hands. Said Mr. C to Mr. B, here one of us shall fall, and like St. Paul's Cathedral now, be doomed to have a ball. I do confess I did attach misconduct to your name. If I withdrew the charge, will then your ramrod do the same? Said Mr. B, I do agree, but think of honour's courts. If we go off without a shot, there will be strange reports. But look, the morning now is bright, though cloudy it begun. Why can't we aim above, as if we had called out the sun? Swoop into the harmless air, their bullets they did send, and may all others' duels have that upshot in the end. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
A Singular Exhibition at Somerset House by Thomas Hood. Read for LibriVox.org by Sonia. A Singular Exhibition at Somerset House. Our Crummie is a dainty cow. Scotch Song. On that first Saturday in May, when lords and ladies, great and grand, repair to see what each R.A. has done since last they sought the strand, in red, brown, yellow, green, or blue, in short, what's called the private view, amongst the guests, the deuce knows how she got in there without a row, there came a large and vulgar dame, with arms deep red, and face the same, showing in temper not a saint. No one could guess for why she came, unless, perchance, to scour the paint. From wall to wall she forced her way, elbowed Lord Durham, poked Lord Grey, stamped Stafford's toes to make him move, and Devonshire's Duke received a shove. The great Lord Chancellor felt her nudge, she made the Vice, his honour, budge, and gave a pinch to Park, the judge. As for the ladies in this stir, the highest rank gave way to her. From number 1 and number 2 she searched the pictures through and through, on benches stood to inspect the high ones, and squatted down to see the shy ones. And as she went from part to part, a deeper red each cheek became, her very eyes lit up in flame that made each looker on exclaim, really an ardent love of art. Alas, amidst her inquisition, fate brought her to a sad condition. She might have run against Lord Milton, and still have stared at deeds in oil, but, her picture joy to spoil, she came full butt on Mr. Hilton. The keeper, mute, with staring eyes, like a lay figure for surprise, at last this stammered out, "How now, woman, where, woman, is your ticket, that ought to have let you through our wicket?" Says woman, "Where's David's cow?" Said Mr. H. with expedition, "There is no cow in the exhibition." No cow! But here her tongue in verity set off with steam and rail celerity. No cow! There ain't no cow, then the more's the shame and pity. Hang you and the R.A.'s and all the hanging committee. No cow! But hold your tongue, for you needn't talk to me. You can't talk up the cow, you can't, to where it ought to be. I haven't seen a picture high or low or anyhow, or in any of the rooms, to be compared with David's cow. You may talk of your Landseers, and of your Coopers and your Wards, why hanging is too good for them, and yet here they are on cords. They're only fit for window frames and shutters and street doors. David will paint them any day at red lions or blue boars. Why, Morland was a fool to him, at a little pig or sow. It's really hard it ain't hung up. I could cry about the cow. But I know well what it is and why. They're jealous of David's fame. But to vent it on the cow, poor thing, is a cruelty and a shame. Do you think it might hang by and by, if you cannot hang it now? David has made a party up to come and see his cow. If it only hung 3 days a week, for an example to the learners, why can't it hang up turn about with that picture of Mr. Turner's? Or do you think from Mr. Etty you need apprehend a row, if now and then you cut him down to hang up David's cow? I can't think where their tastes have been to not have such a creature, although I say, that should not say, it was prettier than nature. It must be hung, and shall be hung, for Mr. H. I vow I daren't take home the catalogue, unless it's got the cow. As we only want it to be seen, I should not so much care if it was only round the Stoneman's neck, a coming up the stair, or down there in the marble room where all the figures stand, where one of them 3 Graces might just hold it in her hand. Or maybe Bailey's Charity the favour would allow. It would really be a charity to hang up David's cow. We haven't nowhere else to go if you don't hang it here. The water colour place allows no oilment to appear, and the British Gallery sticks to Dutch, Teniers, and Gerard Dow, and the Suffolk Gallery will not do. It's not the Suffolk cow. I wish you'd seen him painting her. He hardly took his meals till she was painted on the board, correct from head to heels. His heart and soul was in his cow, and almost made him shabby. He hardly whipped the boys at all, or helped to nurse the babby. And when he had her all complete and painted over red, he got so grand I really thought him going off his head. Now hang it, Mr. Hilton, do just hang it anyhow. Poor David, he will hang himself unless you hang his cow. And if it's inconvenient, and drawn too big by half, David shan't send next year except a very little calf. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Lines to Mary by Thomas Hood. Read for LibriVox.org by Sonia. Lines to Mary. Old Bailey Ballads. At number 1 Newgate. Favoured by Mr. Wontner. O Mary, I believed you true, and I was blessed in so believing, but till this hour I never knew that you were taken up for thieving. Oh, when I snatched a tender kiss, or some such trifle when I courted, you said, indeed, that love was bliss, but never owned you were transported. But then to gaze on that fair face, it would have been an unfair feeling to dream that you had pilfered lace, and flints had suffered from your stealing. Or when my suit I first preferred, to bring your coldness to repentance, before I hammered out a word, how could I dream you heard a sentence? Or when with all the warmth of youth I strove to prove my love no fiction, how could I guess I urged the truth on one already past conviction? How could I dream that ivory part, your hand, where I have looked and lingered, although it stole away my heart, had been held up as one light fingered? In melting verse your charms I drew, the charms in which my muse delighted. Alas! the lay I thought was new spoke only what had been indited. Oh, when that form, a lovely one, hung on the neck its arms had flown to, I little thought that you had run a chance of hanging on your own too. You said you picked me from the world, my vanity it now must shock it, and down at once my pride is hurled. You've picked me, and you've picked a pocket. Oh, when our love had got so far, the banns were read by Dr. Daly, who asked if there was any bar. Why did not someone shout Old Bailey? But when you robed your flesh and bones in that pure white that angel garb is, who could have thought you, Mary Jones, among the Jones that link with Darbies? And when the parson came to say my goods were yours, if I had got any, and you should honour and obey, who could have thought, O Bay of Botany? But oh, the worst of all your slips I did not till this day discover, that down in Deptford's prison ships, O Mary, you've a hulking lover. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Compass, with Variations, by Thomas Hood. Read for LibriVox.org by Sonia. The Compass, with Variations. The needles have sometimes been fatal to mariners. Picture of Isle of Wight. 1. One close of day, 'twas in the bay Of Naples, Bay of Glory, While light was hanging crowns of gold On mountains high and hoary, A gallant bark got under way, And with her sails my story. 2. For Leghorn she was bound direct, With wine and oil for cargo, Her crew of men some 9 or 10, The captain's name was Jago. A good and gallant bark she was, La Donna, called Del Lago. 3. Bronzed mariners were hers to view, With brown cheeks clear or muddy, Dark shining eyes, and coal black hair, Meet heads for painter's study. But midst their 10 there stood one man, Whose cheek was fair and ruddy. 4. His brow was high, a loftier brow Never shone in song or sonnet. his hair a little scant, and when he doffed his cap or bonnet, one saw that Grey had gone beyond a premiership upon it. 5. His eye, a passenger was he, the cabin he had hired it, his eye was grey, and when he looked around the prospect fired it, a fine poetic light as if the Apennine inspired it. 6. His frame was stout, in height about 6 feet, well made and portly, of dress and manner just to give a sketch, but very shortly his order seemed a composite of rustic with the courtly. 7. He ate and quaffed, and joked and laughed, and chatted with the seamen, and often tasked their skill, and asked, "What weather is to be, man?" No demonstration there appeared that he was any demon. 8. No sort of sign there was that he could raise a stormy rumpus, like Prospero make breezes blow, and rocks and billows thump us, but little we supposed what he could with the needle compass. 9. Soon came a storm. The sea at first seemed lying almost fallow, when lo! full crash with billowy dash, from clouds of black and yellow, came such a gale as blows but once a century, like the aloe. 10. Our stomachs we had just prepared to vest a small amount in, when gush! a flood of brine came down the skylight, quite a fountain, and right on end the table reared, just like the Table Mountain. 11. Down rushed the soup, down gushed the wine, each roll its roll repeating, rolled down, the round of beef declared, for parting, not for meeting. Off flew the fowls, and all the game was too far gone for eating. 12. Down knife and fork, down went the pork, the lamb too broke its tether, down mustard went, each condiment, salt, pepper, all together, down everything, like craft that seek the downs in stormy weather. 13. Down plunged the Lady of the Lake, her timbers seemed to sever, down, down, a dreary derry down, such lurch she had gone never, she almost seemed about to take a bed of down for ever. 14. Down dropped the captain's nether jaw, thus robbed of all its uses. He thought he saw the evil one beside Vesuvian sluices, playing at dice for soul and ship, and throwing sink and deuces. 15. Down fell the steward on his face, to all the saints commending, and candles to the Virgin vowed, as say vaults 'gainst his ending. Down fell the mate, he thought his fate, checkmate, was close impending. 16. Down fell the cook, the cabin boy, their beads with fervour telling, while Alps of surge with snowy verge above the yards came yelling. Down fell the crew, and on their knees shuddered at each white swelling. 17. Down sunk the sun of bloody hue, his crimson light a cleaver to each red rover of a wave, to eye of fancy weaver. Neptune the god seemed tossing in a raging scarlet fever. 18. Sore, sore afraid, each papist prayed to Saint Aid Virgin Mary, but one there was that stood composed amid the waves' vagary, as staunch as rock, a true gamecock, mid chicks of Mother Carey. 19. His ruddy cheek retained its streak, no danger seemed to shrink him, his step still bold, of mortal mould the crew could hardly think him. The Lady of the Lake, he seemed to know, could never sink him. 20. Relaxed at last the furious gale, quite out of breath with racing, the boiling flood in milder mood with gentler billows chasing, from stem to stern, with frequent turn, the stranger took to pacing. 21. And as he walked to self he talked, some ancient ditty thrumming, in undertone, as not alone, now whistling and now humming, "You're welcome, Charlie, Cowden knows, Kenmure or Campbell's coming." XXII. Down went the wind, down went the wave, Fear quitted the most finical, The saints, I wot, were soon forgot, And hope was at the pinnacle, When rose on high a frightful cry, "The devil's in the binnacle!" XXIII. "The saints be near!" the helmsman cried, His voice with quite a falter, "Steady's my helm, but every look The needle seems to alter, God only knows where China lies, Jamaica or Gibraltar." XXIV. The captain stared aghast at mate, The pilot at the apprentice, No fancy of the German sea, Of fiction the event is; But when they at the compass looked, It seemed non compos mentis. XXV. Now north, now south, now east, now west, The wavering point was shaken, 'Twas past the whole philosophy Of Newton or of Bacon; Never by compass till that hour Such latitudes were taken. XXVI. With fearful speech, each after each Took turns in the inspection; They found no gun, no iron, none To vary its direction; It seemed a new magnetic case Of poles in insurrection. XXVII. Farewell to wives, farewell their lives, And all their household riches! Oh, while they thought of girl or boy, And dear domestic niches, All down the side which holds the heart, That needle gave them stitches. XXVIII. With deep amaze the stranger gazed, To see them so white livered, And walked abaft the binnacle, To know at what they shivered; But when he stood beside the cart, St. Joseph, how it quivered! XXIX. No fancy motion brain begot In eye of timid dreamer; The nervous finger of a sot Ne'er showed a plainer tremor; To every brain it seemed too plain There stood the infernal schemer. XXX. Mixed brown and blue each visage grew, Just like a pullet's gizzard; Meanwhile the captain's wandering wit, From tacking like an izzard, Bore down in this plain course at last, "It's Michael Scott, the wizard." XXXI. A smile passed o'er the ruddy face; "To see the Poles so falter, I'm puzzled, friends, as much as you, For with no fiends I palter. Michael I'm not, although a Scot, My Christian name is Walter." XXXII. Like oil it fell, that name, a spell, On all the fearful faction; The captain's head (for he had read) Confessed the needle's action, And bowed to him in whom the North Has lodged its main attraction. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Ghost, a very serious ballad by Thomas Hood. Read for LibriVox.org by Drew Conway. 29th of December 2016. Kent. I'll be your second, Liston. In Middle Row some years ago there lived one Mr. Brown, and many folks considered him the stoutest man in town. But brown and stout with both wear out, one Friday he died hard, and left a widowed wife to mourn at 20p a yard. Now Widow B in 2 short months thought mourning quite a tax, and wished, like Mr. Wilberforce, to manumit her blacks. With Mr. Street she soon was sweet. The thing came thus about: she asked him in at home, and then at church he asked her out. Assurance such as this the man in ashes could not stand, so like a phoenix he rose up against the Hand in Hand. One dreary night the angry sprite appeared before her view. It came a little after 1, but she was after 2. Oh, Mrs. B., oh, Mrs. B., are these your sorrow's deeds? Already getting up a flame to burn your widow's weeds? It's not so long since I have left, for I the mortal scene. My memory, like Rogers's, should still be bound in green. Yet if my face you still retrace, I almost have a doubt I'm like an old forget-me-not, with all the leaves torn out. To think that on that finger joint another pledge should cling! Oh, Bess, upon my very soul, it stuck like knock and ring. A ton of marble on my breast can't hinder my return. Your conduct, ma'am, has set my blood a-boiling in my urn. Remember, oh, remember how the marriage rite did run. If ever we one flesh should be, 'tis now, when I have none. And you, so once a bosom friend, of perjured faith convict, as ghostly toe can give no blow, consider you are kicked. A hollow voice is all I have, but this I tell you plain, marry come up, you marry, ma'am, and I'll come up again. More he had said, but chancy clear, that sprightly shade did shock, with sudden crow, and off he went, like fowling piece at cock. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Fall by Thomas Hood. Read for LibriVox.org by Nemo. The Fall. Down, 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 10,000 fathoms deep. Count Fathom. Who does not know that dreadful gulf, where Niagara falls, where eagle unto eagle screams, to vulture vulture calls, where down beneath, despair and death in liquid darkness grope, and upward on the foam there shines a rainbow without hope, while, hung with clouds of fear and doubt, the unreturning wave suddenly gives an awful plunge like life into the grave, and many a hapless mortal there hath dived to bale or bliss. One, only one, hath ever lived to rise from that abyss. Oh, heaven, it turns me now to ice with chill of fear extreme, to think of my frail bark adrift on that tumultuous stream. In vain with desperate sinews, strung by love of life and light, I urged that coffin, my canoe, against the current's might. On, still on, direct for doom the river rushed in force, and fearfully the stream of time raced with it in its course. My eyes I closed, I dared not look the way towards the goal, but still I viewed the horrid close, and dreamt it in my soul. Plainly, as through transparent lids, I saw the fleeting shore, and lofty trees like winged things flit by forevermore. Plainly, but with no prophet sense, I heard the sullen sound, the torrent's voice, and felt the mist like death's sweat gathering round. O agony! O life! My home, and those that made it sweet! Ere I could pray, the torrent lay beneath my very feet. With frightful whirl, more swift than thought, I passed the dizzy edge. Bound after bound, with hideous bruise, I dashed from ledge to ledge, from crag to crag in speechless pain, from midnight deep to deep. I did not die, but anguish stunned my senses into sleep. How long entranced, or whither dived, no clue I have to find. At last the gradual light o' life came dawning o'er my mind, and through my brain there thrilled a cry as shrill as birds, of vulture or of eagle kind, but this was set to words. It's Edgar Huntley in his cap and nightgown, I declares. He's been a walking in his sleep, and pitched all down the stairs. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Our Village by Thomas Hood. Read for LibriVox.org by Patrick Wallace. Our Village by a Villager. Our village, that's to say, not Miss Mitford's village, but our village of Bullock Smithy, is come into by an avenue of trees, 3 oak pollards, 2 elders, and a withy. And in the middle there's a green of about not exceeding 1 acre and a half. It's common to all, and fed off by 19 cows, 6 ponies, 3 horses, 5 asses, 2 foals, 7 pigs, and a calf. Besides a pond in the middle, as is held by a similar sort of common law lease, and contains 20 ducks, 6 drakes, 3 ganders, 2 dead dogs, 4 drowned kittens, and 12 geese. Of course, the green's cropped very close, and does famous for bowling when the little village boys play at cricket. Only some horse or pig or cow or great jackass is sure to come and stand right before the wicket. There's 55 private houses, let alone barns and workshops and pigsties and poultry huts and such like sheds, with plenty of public houses. 2 foxes, 1 green man, 3 bunch of grapes, 1 crown, and 6 king's heads. The green man is reckoned the best, as the only one that for love or money can raise a postilion, a blue jacket, 2 deplorable lame white horses, and a ramshackle neat post chaise. There's 1 parish church for all the people, whatsoever may be their ranks in life or their degrees, except 1 very damp, small, dark, freezing cold, a little Methodist chapel of ease. And close by the churchyard there's a stonemason's yard, that when the time is seasonable will furnish with afflictions sore, and marble urns and cherubims, very low and reasonable. There's a cage, comfortable enough. I've been in it with old Jack Jeffrey and Tom Pike. For the green man next door will send you in ale, gin, or anything else you like. I can't speak of the stocks, as nothing remains of them but the upright post. But the pound is kept in repair for the sake of Cobb's horse, as is always there almost. There's a smithy, of course, where that queer sort of chap in his way, old Joe Bradley, perpetually hammers and stammers, for he stutters and shoes horses very badly. There's a shop of all sorts that sells everything, kept by the widow of Mr. Task, but when you go there it's 10 to 1 she's out of everything you ask. You'll know her house by the swarm of boys like flies about the old sugary cask. There are 6 empty houses, and not so well papered inside as out, for bill stickers won't beware, but stick notices of sales and election placards all about. That's the doctor's, with the green door, where the garden pots in the window is seen. A weekly, monthly rose that don't blow, and a red geranium, and a tea plant with 5 black leaves and 1 green. As for hollyhocks at the cottage doors, and honeysuckles and jasmines, you may go and whistle. But the tailor's front garden grows 2 cabbages, a dock, a ha'porth of pennyroyal, 2 dandelions, and a thistle. There are 3 small orchards. Mr. Busby's, the schoolmaster's, is the chief, with 2 pear trees that don't bear, 1 plum, and an apple that every year is stripped by a thief. There's another small day school too, kept by the respectable Mrs. Gaby, a select establishment for 6 little boys and 1 big and 4 little girls and a baby. There's a rectory with pointed gables and strange odd chimneys that never smokes, for the rector don't live on his living like other Christian sort of folks. There's a barber's once a week, well filled with rough, black-bearded, shock-headed churls, and a window with 2 feminine men's heads and 2 masculine ladies in false curls. There's a butcher's and a carpenter's, and a plumber's and a small green grocer's and a baker, but he won't bake on a Sunday. And there's a sexton that's a coal merchant besides, and an undertaker, and a toy shop, but not a whole one, for a village can't compare with the London shops. 1 window sells drums, dolls, kites, carts, bats, clouts, bulls, and the other sells molten hops. And Mrs. Brown, in domestic economy, not to be a bit behind her betters, lets her house to a milliner, a watchmaker, a rat-catcher, a cobbler, lives in it herself, and it's the post office for letters. Now I've gone through all the village, aye, from end to end, save and except 1 more house. But I haven't come to that, and I hope I never shall, and that's the village poorhouse. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. A Public Dinner By Thomas Hood, Patrick Wallace. Sit down and fall to, said the Barmecide, Arabian Nights. At 7 you just nick it, give card, get wine ticket. Walk round through the Babel from table to table to find, a hard matter, your name in a platter. Your wish was to sit by your friend Mr. Whitby, but steward's assistant has placed you at distance, and thanks to arrangers you sit amongst strangers, but too late for mending. 12 sticks come attending a stick of a chairman, a little dark spare man with bald shining knob, mid-committee, swell mob. In short, a short figure. You thought the Duke bigger. Then silence is wanted, no nobis is chanted, then chairman reads letter, the Duke's a regretter. A promise to break it, but chair he can't take it, is grieved to be from us, but sends friend Sir Thomas, and what is far better, a cheque in the letter. Hear, hear, and a clatter, and there ends the matter. Now soups come, and fish in, and C brings a dish in, then rages the battle, knives clatter, forks rattle, steel forks with black handles under 50 wax candles. Your soup plate is soon full, you sip just a spoonful. Mr. Rowe will be grateful to send him a plateful, and then comes the waiter, must trouble for tater. And then you drink wine off with somebody, 9 off. Bucellas made handy with cape and bad brandy, of East India sherry, that's very hot, very. You helped Mr. Myrtle, then find your mock turtle went off while you lingered, with waiter light-fingered. To make up for gammon, you order some salmon, which comes to your forces with boats, without sauces. You then make a cut on some lamb, big as mutton, and ask for some grass too, but that you must pass too, it's served the first 20. But toast there is plenty. Then while lamb gets coldish, a goose that is oldish, at carving not clever, you're begged to dissever, and when you thus treat it, find no one will eat it. So, hungry as glutton, you turn to your mutton, but no sight for laughter, the soup is gone after. Mr. Green then is very disposed to take sherry, and then Mr. Nappy will feel very happy, and then Mr. Connor requests the same honour. Mr. Clark, when at leisure, will really feel pleasure. Then waiter leans over to take off a cover from fowls, which all beg of a wing or a leg of, and while they all peck bone, you take to a neck bone, but even your hunger declares for a younger. A fresh plate you call for, but vainly you bawl for. Now taste disapproves it, no waiter removes it. Still hope newly budding relies on a pudding, but critics each minute set fancy agin it. That's queer vermicelli. I say, he's a telly, there's glue in that jelly. Tart's bad altogether, that crust's made of leather. Some custard, friend Vesey? No, batter made easy. Some cheese, Mr. Foster? Don't like single Gloucester. Meanwhile, to top table, like Fox in the fable, you see silver dishes with those little fishes, the white-baked delicious, borne past you, officious, and here rather plainish, a sound that's champaignish, and glimpse certain bottles made long in the throttles, and sniff, very pleasant, grouse, partridge, and pheasant, and see mounds of ices for patrons and vices, pineapple and bunches of grapes for sweet munches, and fruits of all virtue that really desert you. You've nuts, but not crack ones, half empty and black ones, with oranges, sallow, they can't be called yellow, some pippins well wrinkled, and plums almond sprinkled, some rout cakes, and so on. Then with business to go on. Long speeches are stuttered, and toasts are well buttered, while dames in the gallery, all dressed in philallery, look on at the mummery, and listen to flummery. Hip, hip, and huzzaying, and singing and saying, glees, catches, orations, and lists of donations. Hush, a song, Mr. Tinney. Mr. Benbow, 1 guinea. Mr. Frederick Manuel, 1 guinea and annual. Song, Jockey and Jenny. Mr. Markham, 1 guinea. Have you all filled your glasses? Here's a health to good lasses. The subscription's still skinny. Mr. Franklin, 1 guinea. Franklin looks like a ninny. Mr. Boreham, 1 guinea. Mr. Blogg, Mr. Finney, Mr. Tempest, 1 guinea. Mr. Merrington, 20. Rough music in plenty. Away toddles chairman, the little dark spare man, not sorry at ending, with white sticks attending. And some vain Tom Noddy votes in his own body to fill the void seat up and get on his feet up to say with voice squeaking, "Unaccustomed to speaking," which sends you off seeking your hat, number 30, no coach, very dirty, so hungry and fevered, wet-footed, spoilt-beavered, eyes aching in socket, £10 out of pocket, to Brook Street the Upper, you haste home to supper. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Sally Simpkin's Lament by Thomas Hood. Read for LibriVox.org by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Sally Simpkin's Lament, or John Jones's Kit Catastrophe. He left his body to the sea, and made a shark his legatee. Bryan and Perrin. Oh, what is that comes gliding in, and quite in middling haste? It is the picture of my Jones, and painted to the waist. It is not painted to the life, for where's the trousers blue? Oh, Jones, my dear, oh, dear my Jones, what is become of you? Oh, Sally dear, it is too true. The half that you remark is come to say my other half is bit off by a shark. Oh, Sally, sharks do things by halves, yet most completely do. A bite in one place seems enough, but I've been bit in two. You know I once was all your own, but now a shark must share. But let that pass, for now to you I'm neither here nor there. Alas, death has a strange divorce effected in the sea. It has divided me from you, and even me from me. Don't fear my ghost will walk o' nights to haunt, as people say. My ghost can't walk, for oh, my legs are many leagues away. Lord, think when I am swimming round, and looking where the boat is, a shark just snaps away a half, without a quarter's notice. One half is here, the other half is near Columbia placed. Oh, Sally, I have got the whole Atlantic for my waist. But now, adieu, a long adieu. I've solved death's awful riddle, and would say more, but I am doomed to break off in the middle. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Ode to Sir Andrew Agnew, Bart. By Thomas Hood. Read for LibriVox.org by Gloria Keave. May 2018. Quote, At certain seasons he makes a prodigious clattering with his bill. Close quote. Selby. Quote, The bill is rather long, flat, and tinged with green. Close quote. Bewick. O Andrew Fairservice, but I beg pardon, you never labored in De Vernon's garden. On curly kale and cabbages intent, Andrew Church service was the thing I meant. You are a Christian. I would be the same, although we differ, and I'll tell you why. Not meaning to make game, I do not like my church so very high. When people talk, as talk they will about your bill, they say, among their other jibes and small jeers, that if you had your way, you'd make the seventh day as overbearing as the day of Algiers. Talk of converting blacks by your attacks, you make a thing so horrible of one day each nigger, they will bet a something tidy would rather be a heathenish man Friday than your man Sunday. So poor men speak, who once a week, perhaps after weaving artificial flowers, can snatch a glance of nature's kinder bowers, and revel in a bloom that is not of the loom, making the earth, the streams, the skies, the trees, a chapel of ease. Whereas, as you would plan it, walled in with hard Scotch granite, people all day should look to their behaviours. But though there be, as Shakespeare owns, sermons in stones, zounds! Would you have us work at them like paviors? Spontaneous is pure devotion's fire, and in a greenwood many a soul has built a new church, with a fir tree for its spire, where sin has prayed for peace and wept for guilt. Better than if an architect the plan drew, We know of old how medicines were backed, but true religion needs not to be quacked by an unmerry Andrew. Suppose a poor town-weary sallow elf at Primrose Hill would renovate himself, or drink, and no great harm, milk genuine at Chalk Farm. The innocent intention who would balk and drive him back into St. Bennet think. For my part, for my life, I cannot think a walk on Sunday is the devil's walk. But there's a sect of deists, and their creed is deeing other people to be deed. Yeas, all that are not of their saintly level, they make a pious point to send with an aroint down to that great Philhellenist, the devil. To such a ramble by the river Lee is really treading on the banks of Dee. Go down to Margate, wisest of lawmakers, and say unto the sea as Canute did, of course the sea will do as it is bid, "This is the Sabbath, but there be no breakers." Seek London's bishop on some Sunday morn, and try him with your tenants to inoculate. Abuse his fine souchong, and say in scorn, "This is not churchmen's chocolate." Or seek dissenters at their midday meal, and read them from your Sabbath bill some passages, and while they eat their mutton, beef, and veal, shout out with holy zeal, "These are not Chappet's sausages." Suppose your act should act up to your will. Yet how will it appear to Mrs. Grundy to hear you saying of this pious bill, "It works well on a Sunday"? To knock down apple stalls is now too late, except to starve some poor old harmless madam. You might have done some good, and changed our fate, could you have upset that which ruined Adam. 'Tis useless to prescribe salt cod and eggs, or lay post horses under legal fetters, while Tattersall's on Sunday stirs its legs. Folks look for good examples from their betters. Consider, Acts of Parliament may bind a man to go where Irvings are discoursing. But as for forcing proper frames of mind, minds are not framed, like melons, for such forcing. Remember, as a Scottish legislator, the Scotch Kirk always has a moderator, meaning one need not ever be sojourning in a long sermon lane without a turning. Such grave old maids as Portia and Zenobia may like discourses with a skein of threads, and love a lecture for its many heads, but as for me, I have the hydrophobia. Religion one should never overdo. Right know I am no minister you be, for you would say your service, sir, to me, till I should say, my service, sir, to you. 6 days made all that is, you know, and then came that of rest, by holy ordination, as if to hint unto the sons of men after creation should come re-creation. Read right this text, and do not further search to make a Sunday workhouse of the church. End of poem. This reading is in the public domain.
The Lost Hare by Thomas Hood. Read for LibriVox.org by Anthony Gerges. The Lost Hare. Oh, where and oh, where is my bonny laddie gone? Old Song. One day as I was going by that part of Holborn christened High, I heard a loud and sudden cry that chilled my very blood. And lo, from out a dirty alley, where pigs and Irish wont to rally, I saw a crazy woman sally, bedaubed with grease and mud. She turned her east, she turned her west, staring like Pythoness possessed, with streaming hair and heaving breast, as one stark mad with grief. This way and that she wildly ran, jostling with woman and with man. Her right hand held a frying pan, the left a lump of beef. At last her frenzy seemed to reach a point just capable of speech, and with a tone almost a screech, as wild as ocean's birds, or female banter moved to preach, she gave her sorrow words. O Lord, oh dear, my heart will break, I shall go stark, staving, staring wild. Has ever a one seen anything about the streets like a crying, lost looking child? Look, help me, I don't know where to look, or to run, if only I knew which way. A child is as lost about in London streets, and especially Seven Dials, is a needle in a bottle of hay. I am all in a quiver, get out of my sight, do you wretch, you little Kitty Minab. You promised you have half an eye to him, you know you did, you deceitful young drab. The last time as I see him, poor thing, was with my own blessed motherly eyes, sitting as good as gold in the gutter a playing at making little dirt pies. I wonder he left the court where he was better off than all the other young boys, with 2 bricks, an old shoe, 9 oyster shells, and a kitten by the way of toys. When his father comes home, and he always comes home, as sure as ever the clock strikes 1, he'll be rampant, he will, at his child being lost, and the beef and the ingunness not done. La bless you, folks, mind your own concerns, and don't be making mob on the street. Oh, Sergeant M'Farlane, you have not come across my little boy, have you, in your beat? Do good people move on, don't stand staring at me like a parcel of stupid stuck pigs. Saint forbid, but he's perhaps been inveigled away up a court for the sake of his clothes. He'd a very good jacket for certain, for I bought it myself for £1 one day in Rag Fair, and his trousers considering not very much patched and red plush, they were once his father. His shirt it's very lucky I got washing in the tub, or that must have been gone with the rest. But he'd got on a very good pinafore with only 2 slits and a burn in the breast. He's a goodish sort of hat if the crown was sewed in, and not quite so much jagged as the brim, with 1 shoe on, and the other is a boot and not a fit, and you'll know by that if it's him. Except being so well dressed, my mind would misgive some old beggar woman in want of an orphan had borrowed the child to go a begging with, but I'd rather see him laid out in his coffin. Do good people move on, such a rabble of boys, I'll break every bone of 'em I come near. Go home, you're spilling the porter, go home, Tommy Jones, go along home with your beer. This day is the sorrowfullest day of my life, ever since my name was Betty Morgan. Them vile Savoyards, they've lost him once more, all with along following a monkey and an organ. Oh, my Billy, my head will turn right round if he's got kidnapped with them Italians. They'll make him a plaster Parish image boy, they will, the outlandish tatterdemalions. Billy, where are you, Billy? I'm as hoarse as a crow with screaming for you, you young sorrow, and shan't have half a voice no more, I shan't, for crying fresh herrings to-morrow. Oh, Billy, you're bursting my heart in 2, and my life won't be of no more vally, if I'm to see other folks' darlings, and none of mine playing like angels in our alley. And what shall I do but cry my eyes when I look at the old 3-legged chair, as Billy used to make coaches and horses of, and there ain't no Billy there. I would run all the wide world over to find him, if only I knew where to run. Little Murphy now I remember was once lost for a month through stealing a penny bun. The Lord forbid of any child of mine, I think it would kill me really, to find my Bill hold up in his little innocent hand at the Old Bailey. For though I say it as oughtn't, yet I will say you may search for miles and mileses, and not find one better brought up and more prettily behaved from the end to other of St. Giles's. And if I called him a beauty, it's no lie, but only as a mother ought to speak. You never set eyes in a more handsomer face, only it hadn't been washed for a week. As for hair, though it's red, it's the most nicest hair when I've got time to show it the comb. I'll owe him £5, and a blessing besides, as will only bring him safe and sound home. He's blue eyes, and not to be called a squint, though a little cast he's certainly got, and his nose is still a good un, though the bridge is broke by the falling on a pewter pint pot. He's got the most elegant wide mouth in the world, and the very large teeth for his age, and quite as fit as Miss Murdoch's child to play Cupid on the Drury Lane stage. And then he's got such a dear winning ways, but oh, I never shall see him no more. Oh dear, to think of losing him just after nussing him back from death's door. Only the very last month, when the wind falls, hang him was 20 a penny, and the 3p he'd got by grotting was spent in plums and 60, for a child is too many. And the cholera man came and whitewashed us all, and dragged him made a sneeze of our hog. It's no use to send the crier to cry to him about, he's such a blundering drunken old dog. The last time he was fetched to find a lost child, he was guzzling with his bell at the Crown, and went and cried a boy instead of a girl for a distracted mother and father about town. Billy, where are you, Billy, I say, come Billy, come home to your best of mothers. I'm scared when I think of them Calbaroys they drive so, they'd run over their own sisters and brothers. Or maybe he's stole by some chimbley-sweeping wretch to stick fast in narrow flues and what not, and be poked up behind with a picked-pointed pole when they sook had ketched up the chimbleys red-hot. Oh, I'd give the whole wide world, if the world was mine, to clap my two longing eyes on his face, for he's my darlin' of darlin's, and if he don't soon come back, you'll see me drop stone dead on the place. I wish I'd got him safe in these two motherly arms, and wouldn't I hug him and kiss him? Look, I never knew what a precious he was, but a child do not feel like a child till you miss him. Why, there he is, Punchin' Judy hunting the young wretch that's Billy as certain as sin. But let me get home with a good grip of his hair, and I'm blessed if he shall have a whole bone on his skin. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Fox and the Hen by Thomas Hood. Read for LibriVox.org by Sandra Schmidt. The Fox and the Hen. A Fable. Speaking within compass, as to fabulousness I prefer South coat to North coat. Pygrogromitus. One day or night, no matter where or when, sly Reynard, like a footpad, laid his pad right on the body of a speckled hen, determined upon taking all she had, and like a very bibber at his bottle, began to draw the claret from her throttle. Of course it put her in a pretty pucker, and with a scream as high as she could cry, she called for help. She had enough of succour. Dame Partlet's scream waked, luckily, the house-dog from his dream, and with a savage growl, in answer to the fowl, he bounded forth against the prowling sinner, and uninvited came to the fox dinner. Sly Reynard, heedful of the coming doom, thought, self-deceived, he should not be perceived hiding his brush within the neighbouring broom, but quite unconscious of a poacher's snare, and caught in copper noose, and looking like a goose, found that his fate had hung upon a hair. His tricks and turns were rendered of no use to him, and worst of all, he saw old Sourly Tray coming to play trade-use with him. Tray, an old mastiff bred at Dunstable, under his master, a most special constable, instead of killing Reynard in a fury, seized him for legal trial by a jury. But juries, Æsop was a sheriff then, consisted of 12 brutes, and not of men. But first the elephant sat on the body, I mean the hen, and proved that she was dead, to the veriest fool's head of the booby and the noddy. Accordingly the stork brought in a bill, quite true enough to kill, and then the owl was called, for mark, the owl can witness in the dark. To make the evidence more plain, the lynx connected all the chain. In short, there was no quirk or quibble at which a legal rat could nibble. The culprit was as far beyond hope's bounds as if the jury had been packed of hounds. Reynard, however, at the utmost nick, is seldom quite devoid of shift and trick. Accordingly our cunning fox, through a certain influence obscurely channelled, a friendly camel got into the box, when 'gainst his life the jury was impennelled. Now in the Scilly Isles such is the law. If jurors should withdraw, they are to have no eating and no drinking, till all are starved into one way of thinking. Thus Reynard's jurors, who could not agree, were locked up strictly, without bit or mummock, till every beast that only had one stomach bent to the camel, who was blessed with 3. To do them justice, they debated from 4 till 10, while dinner waited, when thirst and hunger got the upper, and each inclined to mercy and hot supper. Not guilty was the word, and Master Fox was freed to murder other hens and cocks. Moral. What moral greets us by this tale's assistance, but that the Solon is a sorry Solon, who makes the full stop of a man's existence depend upon a colon? End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Poacher, a Serious Ballad by Thomas Hood. Read for LibriVox.org by Drew Conway. But a bold pheasantry, their country's pride, when once destroyed can never be supplied. Goldsmith. Bill Blossom was a nice young man, and drove the Bury coach. But bad companions were his bane, and egged him on to poach. They taught him how to net the birds, and how to noose the hare, and with a wiry terrier he often set a snare. Each shiny night the moon was bright, to park, preserve, and wood he went and kept the game alive by killing all he could. Landowners who had rabbits swore that he had this demerit: give him an inch of warren, he would take a yard of ferret. At partridges he was not nice, and many large and small, without horse powder, without lead, were sent to Leaden Hall. He did not fear to take a deer from forest, park, or lawn, and without courting lord or duke used frequently to fawn. Folks who had hares discovered snares, his course they would not stop. No barber he, and yet he made their hares a perfect crop. To pheasant he was such a foe, he tried the keepers' nerves. They swore he never seemed to have jam satis of preserves. The shooter went to beat and found no sporting worth a pin, unless he tried the covers made of silver plate or tin. In Kent the game was little worth, in Surrey not a button. The speaker said he often tried the manners about Button. No country from his tricks was safe, in each he tried his lucks, and when the keepers were in beds, he often was in bucks. And when he went to bucks, alas, they always came to hearts, and even oxen used to wish that he had his deserts. But going to his usual haunts, old Cheshire laid his plots. He got entrapped by legal Burkes, and lost his life in knots. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. A Waterloo Ballad by Thomas Hood. Read for LibriVox.org by Drew Conway. To Waterloo with sad ado, and many a sigh and groan, amongst the dead came Patty Head to look for Peter Stone. O prithee tell, good sentinel, if I shall find him here. I'm come to weep upon his corse, my 92nd dear. Into our town a sergeant came, with ribbons all so fine, a flaunting in his cap, alas, his bow enlisted mine. They taught him how to turn his toes, and stand as stiff as starch. I thought that it was Love and May, but it was Love and March. A sorry march indeed to leave the friends he might have kept. No march of intellect it was, but quite a foolish step. O prithee tell, good sentinel, if hereabout he lies. I want a corpse with reddish hair and very sweet blue eyes. Her sorrow on the sentinel appeared to deeply strike. Walk in, he said, among the dead, and pick out which you like. And soon she picked out Peter Stone, half turned into a corse. A cannon was his bolster, and his mattress was a horse. O Peter Stone, O Peter Stone, Lord, here has been a scrimmage. What have they done to your poor breast that used to hold my image? O Patty Head, O Patty Head, you've come to my last kissing, before I'm set in the Gazette as wounded, dead, and missing. Alas, a splinter of a shell right in my stomach sticks. French mortars don't agree so well with stomachs as French bricks. This very night a merry dance at Brussels was to be. Instead of opening a ball has opened me. Its billet every billet has, as well it does fulfil it. I wish mine hadn't come so straight, but been a crooked billet. And then there came a cuirassier and cut me on the chest. He had no pity in his heart, for he had steeled his breast. Next thing a lancer with his lance began to thrust away. I called for quarter, but alas, it was not quarter day. He ran his spear right through my arm, just here above the joint. Oh, Patty dear, it was no joke, although it had a point. With loss of blood I fainted off, as dead as women do. But soon, by charging over me, the Coldstream brought me to. With kicks and cuts and balls and blows I throb and ache all over. I'm quite convinced the field of Mars is not a field of clover. Oh, why did I a soldier turn for any royal gelf? I might have been a butcher, and in business for myself. Oh, why did I a bounty take, and here he's gasped for breath? My shilling worth of list is nailed upon the door of death. Without a coffin I shall lie and sleep my sleep eternal, not even a shell my only chance of being made a colonel. Oh, Patty dear, our wedding bells will never ring at Chester. Here I must lie in honour's bed, that isn't worth a tester. Farewell, my regimental mates with whom I used to dress. My corpse is changed, and I am now in quite another mess. Farewell, my Patty dear, I have no dying consolations, except when I am dead you'll go and see the illuminations. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
A Lay of Real Life by Thomas Hood. Read for LibriVox.org by Linda Olsen-Freitag, Los Angeles. A Lay of Real Life. Some are born with a wooden spoon in their mouths, and some with a golden ladle. Goldsmith. Some are born with tin rings in their noses, and with silver ones. Silversmith. Who ruined me ere I was born, sold every acre grass or corn, and left the next heir all forlorn? My grandfather. Who said my mother was no nurse, and physicked me and made me worse, till infancy became a curse? My grandmother. Who left me in my 7th year, a comfort to my mother dear, and Mr. Pope, the overseer? My father. Who let me starve to buy her gin, till all my bones came through my skin, then called me ugly little sin? My mother. Who said my mother was a Turk, and took me home and made me work, but managed half my meals to shirk? My aunt. Who of all earthly things would boast he hated others' brats the most, and therefore made me feel my post? My uncle. Who got in scrapes an endless score, and always laid them at my door, till many a bitter bang I bore? My cousin. Who took me home when mother died, again with father to reside, black shoes, clean knives, run far and wide? My stepmother. Who marred my stealthy urchin joys, and when I played cried, "What a noise! Girls always hector over boys." My sister. Who used to share in what was mine, or took it all did he incline, 'cause I was 8 and he was 9. My brother, who stroked my head and said, "Good lad," and gave me 6pence, all he had, but at the stall the coin was bad. My godfather, who gratis shared my social glass, but when misfortune came to pass, referred me to the pump, alas. My friend, through all this weary world in brief, who ever sympathized with grief, or shared my joy, my sole relief? Myself. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Sweep's Complaint by Thomas Hood. Read for LibriVox.org by Anthony Gerges. I like to meet a sweep, such as coming forth with the dawn, or somewhat earlier, with their little professional notes, sounding like the peep-peep of a young sparrow. Essays of Elia. A voice cried, "Sweep no more! Macbeth hath murdered Sweep." Shakespeare. One morning ere my usual time, I rose about the 7th chime, when little stunted boys that climb still linger in the street. And as I walked, I saw indeed a sample of the sooty breed, though he was rather run to seed, in height about 5 feet. A mongrel tint he seemed to take, poetic simile to make, day through martins 'gan to break, white overcoming jet. From side to side he crossed oblique, like Frenchman who has friends to seek, and yet no English word can speak, he walked upon the fret. And while he sought the dingy job, his laboring breast appeared to throb, and half a hiccup, half a sob, betrayed internal woe. To cry amain he had by rote, he yearned but law forbade the no, like Chanticleer with rupee throat, he gaped but not a crow. I watched him, and the glimpse I snatched disclosed his sorry eyelids patched with red, as if the soot he'd catch that hung about the lid. And soon I saw the teardrops stray, he did not care to brush away. Thought I the cause he will betray, and thus at last he did. Well, here's a pretty go, here's a gagging act, if ever there was a gagging, but I'm bound the members has silenced us, in doing it had plenty of magging. They had better send us all off, they had, to the school for the deaf and dumb, to unlarn us our mother tongues, and to make signs and be regularly mum. But they can't undo nature, as sure as ever the morning begins to peep. Directly I open my eyes, I can't help calling out sweep, as natural as the sparrows among the chimney pots that say cheap. For my own part, I find the suppressed voice very uneasy, and comparable to nothing but having your tissue stopped when you are sneezy. Well, it's all up with us, though I suppose we mustn't cry all up. Here's a precious Merry Christmas, I'm blessed if I can either earn a bit or sup. If crying sweep of mornings is going beyond quietness's border, them as pretends to be fond of silence on to cry hear, hear, and order, order. I wonder, Mr. Sutton, as we've sut on too don't sympathize with us. As a speaker, what don't speak, and that's exactly our own cuss. God help us, if we do not cry, how are we to pursue our callings? I'm sure we're not half so bad as the other businesses with their bawlings. For instance, the general postman that at 6 o'clock go about ringing, and wake up all the babies that their mothers have just got to sleep with singing. Greens oughtn't to be cried no more than blacks, to do the impartial job. If they bring in a sooty bill, they ought to have brought in a dusty bob. Is a dustman's voice more sweet than ourn, when he comes seeking ardour the cinders, instead of a little boy like a blackbird in spring, singing merrily under your windows? There's the ominous cads as pals in Cheapside, and keeps calling out Bank and City. Let us worship the mayor, decide if our call of sweep is not just as pretty. I can't see why the Jews should be let go about crying old clothes through their hooky noses, and Christian laws should be 10 times more hard than the old stone laws of Moses. Why isn't the mouths of the muffin men compelled to be equally shut? Why, because Parliament members eat muffins, but they never eat no sut. Next year there won't be any May Day at all, and we shan't have no heart to dance, and Jack in the Green will go in black like mourning for our mischance. If we live as long as May, that's to say, through the hard winter and pinching weather, for I don't see how we're to earn enough to keep body and soul together. I only wish Mr. Wilberforce, or some of them that pities the niggers, would take a peep down our cellars, and look at our miserable starving figures. A sitting idle on our empty sacks, and all ready to eat each other, and a brood of little ones crying for bread to a heartbreaking father and mother. They haven't a rag of clothes to mend if their mothers had threads and needles, but crawl naked about the cellars, poor things, like a swarm of common black beetles. If they'd only inquired before passing the act, and taken a few such peeps, I don't think that any real gentleman would have set his face against the sweeps. Climbing's an ancient respectable art, and if history of any valley was recommended by Queen Elizabeth to the Sir Great Walter Raleigh, when he wrote on a pane of glass how I'd climb if the way I only knew, and she writ beneath, if your heart's afraid, don't venture up the flue. As for me, I was always loyal, and respected all powers that are higher, but how can I now say God save the King, if I ain't to be a crier? There's London milk, that's one of the cries, even on Sunday the law allows, but ought black sweeps that are human beasts to be worse off than black cows? Do we go calling about that it's church time like the noisy Billingston vermin, and disturb the parson with all alive-o in the middle of a funeral sermon? But the fish won't keep, not the mackerel won't, is the cry of the Parliament elves. Everything except the sweeps, I think, is to be allowed to keep themselves. Lord help us, what's become of us, if we mustn't cry no more? We shan't do 4 black mutes to go a-standing at a death's door, and we shan't do to emigrate, not even to the Hottentot nations, for as time wears on, our black will wear off, and then think of our situations. And we should not do, in lieu of Blackmore footmen, to serve ladies of quality nimbly, for when we were dressed in our sky blue and silver, and large frills, all clean and neat, and white silk stockings, if they pleased to desire us to sweep the hearth, we couldn't resist the chimbley. End of poem. This recording's in the public domain.
The Desert Born by Thomas Hood. Read for LibriVox.org by Sandra Schmidt. The Desert Born. Fly to the desert, fly with me. Lady Hester Stanhope. 'Twas in the wilds of Lebanon, amongst its barren hills. To think upon it, even now, my very blood it chills. My sketch-book spread before me, and my pencil in my hand, I gazed upon the mountain range, the red tumultuous sand, the plumy palms, the sombre firs, the cedars tall and proud, when, lo! a shadow passed across the paper like a cloud, and looking up, I saw a form, apt figure for the scene. Methought I stood in presence of some oriental queen. The turban on her head was white as any driven snow, a purple bandelet passed over the lofty brow below, and thence upon her shoulders fell, by either jewelled ear. In yellow folds voluminous she wore her long cashmere, whilst underneath, with ample sleeves, a Turkish robe of silk enveloped her in drapery the colour of new milk. Yet oft it floated wide in front, disclosing underneath a gorgeous Persian tunic, rich with many a broidered wreath, compelled by clasps of costly pearls around her neck to meet, and yellow as the amber were the buskins on her feet. Of course I bowed my lowest bow. Of all the things on earth, the reverence due to loveliness, to rank or ancient birth, to power, to wealth, to genius, or to anything uncommon, a man should bend the lowest in a desert to a woman. Yet some strange influence, stronger still, though vague and undefined, compelled me, and with magic might subdued my soul and mind. There was a something in her air that drew the spirit nigh, beyond the common witchery that dwells in woman's eye. With reverence deep, like any slave of that peculiar land, I bowed my forehead to the earth, and kissed the arid sand. And then I touched her garment's hem, devoutly as a dervis, predestinated, so I felt, forever to her service. Nor was I wrong in auguring thus my fortune from her face. She knew me, seemingly, as well as any of her race. "Welcome," she cried, as I uprose submissive to my feet. "It was ordained that you and I should in this desert meet. I, ages since, before thy soul had burst its prison bars, this interview was promised in the language of the stars." Then clapping, as the Easterns wont, her all-commanding hands, a score of mounted Arabs came fast spurring over the sands. Nor reined they up their foaming steeds, till in my very face they blew the breath impetuous, and panting from the race. "Fear not," exclaimed the radiant one, as I sprang off aloof, "thy precious frame need never fear a blow from horse's hoof. Thy natal star was fortunate as any orb of birth, and fate hath held in store for thee the rarest gift of earth." Then turning to the dusky men that humbly waited near, she cried, "Go bring the beautiful, for lo, the man is here." Off went obsequious train as swift as Arab hoofs could flee. But fancy fond outraced them all, with bridle loose and free, and brought me back, for love's attack, some fair Circassian bride, or Georgian girl, the harem's boast, and fit for sultan's side. Methought I lifted up her veil, and saw dark eyes beneath, mild as gazelles, a snowy brow, ripe lips, and pearly teeth, a swan-like neck, a shoulder round, full bosom, and the waist not too compact, and rounded limbs to oriental taste. Methought, but here, alas, alas, the airy dream to blight, behold the Arabs leading up a mare of milky white. To tell the truth, without reserve, evasion, or remorse, the last of creatures in my love or liking is a horse. Whether in early youth some kick untimely laid me flat, whether from born antipathy, as some dislike a cat, I never yet could bear the kind, from Mook's giant steeds, down to those little bearish cubs of Shetland's shaggy breeds. As for a war horse, he that can bestride one is a hero. Merely to look at such a sight, my courage sinks to zero. With lightning eyes, and thunder mane, and hurricanes of legs, tempestuous tail, to picture him description vainly begs. His fiery nostrils sent forth clouds of smoke instead of breath. Nay, was it not a horse that bore the grisly shape of death? Judge then how cold an ague fit of agony was mine, to see the mistress of my fate, imperious, make a sign to which my own foreboding soul the cruel sense supplied. "Mount, happy man, and run away with your Arabian bride." Grim was the smile, and tremulous the voice with which I spoke, like any one's when jesting with a subject not a joke. So men have trifled with the axe before the fatal stroke. Lady, if mine had been the luck in Yorkshire to be born, or any of its ridings, this would be a blessed morn. But, hapless one, I cannot ride. 'Tis something in a horse that I can always honour, but I never could endorse. To speak still more commercially, in riding I am quite averse to running long, and apt to be paid off at sight. In legal phrase, for every class to understand me still, I never was in stirrups yet a tenant, but at will, or if you please, in artists' terms. I never went a straddle on any horse without a want of keeping in the saddle. In short, and here I blushed, abashed, and held my head full low, I'm one of those whose infant ears have heard the chimes of bow. The lady smiled, as houris smile, adown from Turkish skies, and beams of cruel kindness shone within her hazel eyes. "Stranger," she said, "or rather say, my nearest dearest friend, there's something in your eyes, your air, and that high instep's bend, that tells me you're of Arab race. Whatever spot of earth, Cheapside or Bow or Stepney, had the honour of your birth, the East, it is your country. Like an infant changed to nurse by fairies, you have undergone a nurtureship perverse. But this, the desert sands, these palms and cedars, waving wild, all adopt thee as their own, an oriental child. The cloud may hide the sun awhile, but soon or late, no doubt, the spirit of your ancestry will burst and sparkle out. I read the starry characters, and lo, 'tis written there, thou wert foredoomed of sons of men to ride upon this mare. A mare till now was never backed by one mortal mould. Hark how she neighs, as if for thee she knew that she was foaled. And truly, I devoutly wished a blast of the simoon had stifled her. The mare herself appeared to mock my doom. With many a bound she capered round and round me like a dance. I feared indeed some wild caress would end the fearful prance, and felt myself, and saw myself, the fantasy was horrid, like old red gauntlet with a shoe imprinted on my forehead. On bended knees, with bowing head and hands upraised in prayer, I begged the turbaned sultaness the issue to forbear. I painted weeping orphan babes around a widowed wife, and drew my death as vividly as others draw from life. Behold, I said, a simple man for such high feats unfit, who never yet has learned to know the crupper from the bit, whereas the boldest horsemanship and first equestrian skill would well be tasked to bend so wild a creature to the will. Alas, alas, 'twas all in vain to supplicate and kneel. The quadruped could not have been more cold to my appeal. Fear nothing, said the smiling Fate, when human help is vain. Spirits shall by thy stirrups fly, and fairies guide the rein. Just glance at yonder animal, her perfect shape remark, and in thy breast at once shall glow the oriental spark. As for thy spouse and tender babes, no Arab roams the wild, but for a mare of such descent would barter wife and child. Oh, nay then, cried I, heaven shrive the lie. To tell the secret truth, 'twas my unhappy fortune once to override a youth, a playful child, so full of life, a little fair-haired boy, his sister's pet, his father's hope, his mother's darling joy. Ah me, the frantic shriek she gave! I hear it ringing now. That hour, upon the bloody spot, I made a holy vow, a solemn compact, deeply sworn, to witness my remorse, that never more these limbs of mine should mount on living horse. Good heaven, to see the angry glance that flashed upon me now! A chill ran all my marrow through, the drops were on my brow. I knew my doom, and stole a glance at that accursed mare, and there she stood, with nostrils wide that snuffed the sultry air. How lion-like she lashed her flanks with her abundant tail, while on her neck the stormy mane kept tossing to the gale. How fearfully she rolled her eyes between the earth and sky, as if in wild uncertainty to gallop or to fly, while with her hoof she scooped the sand, as if before she gave my plunge into eternity she meant to dig my grave. And I, that never could calmly hear a horse's ears at play, or hear without a yard of jump his shrill and sudden neigh, whose foot within a stable door had never stood an inch, whose hand to pat a living steed would feel an awful flinch, I that had never thrown a leg across a pony small, to scour the pathless desert on the tallest of the tall. For oh, it is no fable, but at every look I cast, her restless legs seemed twice as long as when I saw them last. In agony I shook, and yet, although congealed by fears, my blood was boiling fast, to judge from noises in my ears. I gasped, as if in vacuo, and thrilling with despair, some secret demon seemed to pass his fingers through my hair. I could not stir, I could not speak, I could not even see. A sudden mist rose up between that awful mare and me. I tried to pray, but found no words. Though ready ripe to weep, no tear would flow. O'er every sense a swoon began to creep. When lo, to bring my horrid fate at once unto the brunt, 2 Arabs seized me from behind, 2 others in the front, and ere a muscle could be strung to try the strife forlorn, I found myself, Mazeppa-like, upon the desert born. Terrific was the neigh she gave the moment that my weight was felt upon my back, as if exulting in her freight, whilst dolefully I heard a voice that set each nerve ajar, "Off with the bridle, quick, and leave his guidance to his star." "Allah! Illallah!" rose the shout, and starting with a bound, the dreadful creature cleared at once 12 yards of ground, and grasping at her mane with both my cold convulsive hands, away we flew, away, away across the shifting sands. My eyes were closed in utter dread of such a fearful race, but yet by certain signs I knew we went no earthly pace, for turn whichever way we might, the wind with equal force rushed like a horrid hurricane, still adverse to our course. One moment close at hand I heard the roaring Syrian sea, the next is only murmured like the humming of a bee. And when I dared at last to glance across the wild immense, oh, never shall I forget the whirl that met the dizzy sense. What seemed like a little sprig of fern, ere lips could reckon twain, a palm of 40 cubits high, we passed it on the plain. What tongue could tell, what pencil paint, what pen describe the ride? Now off, now on, now up, now down, and flung from side to side, I tried to speak, but had no voice to soothe her with its tone. My scanty breath was jolted out with many a sudden groan, my joints were racked, my back was strained, so firmly had I clung, my nostrils gushed, and thrice my teeth had bitten through my tongue, when, lo, farewell all hope of life, she turned and faced the rocks. None but a flying horse could clear those monstrous granite blocks. So thought I, but I little knew the desert pride and fire derived from a most deer-like dam and lion-hearted sire. Little I guessed the energy of muscle, blood, and bone. Bound after bound, with eager springs, she cleared each massive stone. 9 mortal leaps were passed before a huge grey rock at length stood planted there, as if to dare her utmost pitch of strength. My time was come, that granite heap, my monument of death. She paused, she snorted loud and long, and drew a fuller breath. 9 strides, and then a louder beat that warned me of her spring. I felt her rising in the air like eagle on a wing. But oh, the crash, the hideous shock, the million sparks around! Her hindmost hoofs had struck the crest of that prodigious mound. Wild shrieked the headlong desert born, or else 'twas demon's mirth. 1 second more, and man and mare rolled breathless on the earth. How long it was I cannot tell ere I revived to sense, and then but to endure the pangs of agony intense. For over me lay powerless, and still as any stone, the corse that erst had so much fire, strength, spirit of its own. My heart was still, my pulses stopped, midway twixt life and death. With pain unspeakable I fetched the fragment of a breath, not vital air enough to frame one short and feeble sigh, yet even that I loathed, because it would not let me die. Oh, slowly, slowly, slowly on from starry night till morn, time flapped along with leaden wings across that waste forlorn. I cursed the hour that brought me first within this world of strife. A sore and heavy sin it is to scorn the gift of life. But who hath felt a horse's weight oppress his labouring breast? Why, any who has had, like me, the nightmare on his chest. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.